The Lakotas say it's a good day to die, which means every moment should be done preciously. And that means how we help one another right now, too. It's precious. I'm going to get into that. So many lessons. I'm in Vishakhapatnam. Now, everybody knows, any seasoned devotee or person that's been to India for 3 years knows that you put, if you have good shoes, you put one shoe on one side of the temple and one shoe on the other side. Because monkeys or people won't take one shoe. So I did that. It's Vishakhapatnam, and Prabhupada goes walking by. Gliding by, I should say. It's like his feet didn't touch the ground. I'll tell us, just say worm after this story, because it reminds me of another story. It's like his feet didn't touch the ground. And I didn't have shoes, and there's barnacles and shells, and I'm going up and down. Where are your shoes? He already told me to wear shoes in Vrindaban. I became artificial after all these years with him. I said, when I'm with you, Prabhupada, I don't feel any pain. My hippie. At any rate, he goes, and then he laughs. Then why don't you cut your throat? So you get it. You got what he... Now, some devotees would say, Prabhupada wanted me to, but he knew. I knew what he was getting at. He said, there's enough tapasya in the world that you don't have to put any more on yourself. Now, this is important. It's important, including guilt about how you're not an advanced devotee. If you're sincere, Krishna knows. All these things. Okay, worm. We're on John Lennon's estate, and we're like in a V. And Prabhupada has Wellington boots on, these like rubber boots. And we have sneakers with holes in it. And it's in the winter, and it's dewy. And I see a worm going towards Prabhupada. A worm is going towards Prabhupada. And there's Prabhupada's feet. And the worm's going, well, it's a living entity, but wait, it might be liberated, like people falling under the Jagannath car wheels. And then the old stuff from the past, Prime Directive, don't mess with anything, from Star Trek. And then, but it's a living entity. I'm about, oh no, the worm is there and Prabhupada's foot is there. And then the worm went on and Prabhupada's foot. And I saw there's no footprints in this. Like Yudhisthira's chariot, he didn't tell a lie. Another time, he was doing his cloth in a bucket. I said, I'll do it. He says, no, I'll do it. Be as independent as possible. He said, I'll show you how to roll a chapati with a Limca bottle. And then like a samurai, he put the bottle down. His movements were always perfect. Lotus movements. I'll show you how to do it without a bottle, like they do in Braj, like they were saying, thick. So here's a dichotomy. Be independent and also be dependent on Krishna. So what it really means is Krishna really doesn't want us to give up our individuality. It's easier to administrate if everybody's acting alike, and we do a lot of things together, but it doesn't mean we give up our individuality, because Krishna gave us these talents. And that's the beauty. Krishna is all attractive. And that's why, as Prabhupada's body, like you were saying, we all contribute in different ways. And the hierarchy is this way, not this way. Because one of the greatest things Prabhupada ever gave us was dasana das. Just think how that could change the world. And we see it. People bring water, they bring flowers. I mean, as dysfunctional and weird as our family is, it's a very loving family. It's a I go to many gatherings, and the love that flows between devotees is not replicated. It isn't. So we have to be representatives of Prabhupada. Remember, he was a gentleman. He didn't raise his voice, get arguments. He did say one time, my godbrothers don't have the will, the knowledge, and the enthusiasm to attract you Westerners. And then he sent me to one of his godbrothers in Mayapur to get something. And this guy had the personality of a dish rag. You know, I think Prabhupada did it just to do the theatrical emphasis to show. It's true. The beauty of Prabhupada is you never knew what he was going to do or say. It was adventurous. In this book, I show why I'm having pleasure. Why would this person who's having pleasure go join the 71-year-old man? And then asking them to give up pleasurable stuff that you're doing? And because Prabhupada said, I gave them something tangible. And he gave himself, which was charming and sweet and humorous and adventurous. He'd take me through so many adventures, including even meeting the Beatles. Who would think when the spiritual master says, well, I want you to go to London because my spiritual master said it's very important, it's the hub of the world, and our only plan was we got to meet the Beatles. If we didn't have this belief system, would we even think that way? And then Krishna does. Okay, here's another story. It's kind of interesting. I told it last night. How do you know Krishna is God? Because you told us, I said. They will just say I'm old man. Somebody said, because the Bhagavad Gita says so. They can say it's a book. You know Krishna is God by the ecstasy you feel, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. He liked to do English proverbs. Scottish Churches College. So, we're in Philadelphia on a morning walk, and everybody's trying to get close to Prabhupada, and I don't have to. He gave me so much time, and I'm hanging back, and he stops, and everybody just misses hitting him. The Keystone Cops. And how do you know Krishna's God? Well, you told, somebody said, you said so. They will say I'm old man. I get up there. You know Krishna's God by the ecstasy you feel, the proof of the puddings, and I'm like a little dog wagging my tail, the proof of the puddings in the eating. He says, no, Bhagavad Gita says so. Time, place, circumstance, folks. Different slogs for different folks. Okay. Now, I saw Prabhupada disarm so many parents with this way. We're back in San Francisco. Now, we didn't have a Vyasasan. He didn't tell us. He didn't tell us to bow down. There was no mridungas, no kartals, no books. There was a totem pole, Native American totem pole, to the right of the altar. There was Lord Jesus in the temple, and Prabhupada sat on the altar and played bongo drums. So now finally we get a Vyasasan. And Govindadasi's parents come, and they're from Texas, and people in Texas think they're bigger and better than everybody else. And they go up right to the Vyasasan without any awe and respect. Now, by this time, the East Indian community is coming, so the Patel clan goes to Prabhupada's Vyasasan with Govindadasi's parents, because they're thinking, we're going to hear some divine lotus words. Govindadasi's father says, why does my daughter have to have an Indian name? The Patels are there, and Govindadasi's father starts to go like this. And the chief of the Patels had a gold tooth, and the light was banking off it and hitting Govindadasi's father in the eye, which made it worse. Prabhupada sees and he said, you do not like Indians? Yeah, I like Indians, all right. But why does my daughter have to have an Indian name? If your daughter is happy, why do you object? And then Mrs. Govindadasi took him. Now, regarding the founder Acharya, you alluded to that, and I would want to see your book, but here's a lesson in personalism. We had registered the society in England, and we had the Prime Minister's solicitor versus the fencing champion solicitor. And we got registered. That's in the books too, but oh, that's a great story. How the door was open and we did kirtan. They said it was soundproof. We did kirtan and then the door closed and we went like that. And they said, we can't even hear it in the hall. Don't do this at home, folks, but you got to be clever for Krishna. I don't know if you understood. It's a long story, but we pretended to do kirtan. When the door closed, they could see in the window. So they said, we can't even hear the sound. Because the neighbor was claiming his wife was fainting and his dog was jumping up and down, yipping during the kirtan. So that's another story. Okay. So we had to register in Bombay. And we had a board of directors. So we based the aims and objects on Aurobindo Society. Just the things like you're allowed to distribute books, videos, buy property, the practical stuff, no spiritual stuff. And the first line said, the founder Acharya is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The second line was, and I was showing it to him, this is what we came up with, we're going to present it to the board for ratification. And we had to get some clerk to do a notary thing to make it official. Second line is the founder Acharya has full veto power. The first line, the founder Acharya is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The second line is, the founder Acharya shall have full veto power. Prabhupada, he says, who's founder Acharya? You? Brahmananda? Brahmananda got it 3,000 miles for a past. Well, it wasn't a good deed he did. He said, Prabhupada's God. That's another story. Who's founder Acharya? You, Brahmananda? Get it fixed. Now, we were living in the Sea Palace Hotel. It wasn't a big place. There's a nice man from London who, great guy, part of our congregation. He had me bless his baby. Prabhupada gave me the transcendental silent treatment for 3 days. It was the weekend. So I had to do this by the weekend, and he wouldn't look at. He'd call me in 10 times a day. No calling me in. Nothing. And he's walking down the hall, and I'm behind the... I said, I go out like this. And he walked down the hall transcendental. He didn't even see me. He was so transcendental sometimes. Silent treatment until I got it rectified. So I go to this clerk who thought he was a demigod. And I showed him the ratification that the founder, Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada shall have full veto power. The board okayed it. He wanted bakshish. He wanted a bribe. I never gave a bribe in India. I said, we have a press conference tonight, and it was with all these big names in Bombay, the head of the CID and everybody. So I said, we're having a press conference, and I'm going to bring this up. Do you want me to say that you didn't know the law, or you're ignorant of the law, or you wanted a bribe? What do you want me to say? And then he saw I was really ready to about bang his desk with my fist, and he said, okay, I'll sign. So I go back to Prabhupada, and I bring it in, and I'm actually crying. I don't want to be founder Acharya. I know, but I could think that. See, a lesson in personalism. He came up with beautiful adages. We're looking at paintings in Nandagram. Beautiful art on the walls. He said, art means full belly. Meaning, people will not appreciate spiritual life if they're surviving. Or art. Art means full belly. What a beautiful statement. The magic I see is the ecstasy you feel. I go traveling and new magic happens, and Prabhupada, like that story with the water coming down, is magic. It's ecstasy. It's exciting because you don't know what's next. Yamuna, by the way, in case anybody doesn't know me, I'm Yamuna's husband. No, some people actually, I'm talking to them, and they're talking, and I say, I'm Yamuna. Oh. So, what can I do? She's really a great devotee, and her definition of Krishna consciousness is, if you live it, you can give it. So I had 11 years, 9 years. Yeah, at any rate, by osmosis, some of the devotions spilled over to me, her and Prabhupada. I have her cartals. Some guy in Hawaii said, thank you for coming to England. If it wasn't for you coming, I wouldn't be a devotee. And here are these cartals. I stole them from Yamuna 35 years ago. Now, Prabhupada said, if you do that, that does rectify it. No, he did. So, Yamuna loved to make pomegranate juice by hand for Prabhupada. Well, she's bringing it around the corner, and she hears... She peeks around. Prabhupada, were you talking to the monkeys? Yes, I told them to go away. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I loved his writings because some of the things you were talking about had that flowery language, that Victorian, which is so rich and poetic. And Prabhupada's books are wonderful, but in some ways, well, not the Krishna book. And he said Krishna was on his shoulder dictating it, he told me. But some of his books were instructive, etc., purports. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's books were very epic and poetic. And so in some ways, I liked him as the best spiritual author. And we're walking in the park Regent Park. And I said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is my second favorite author. And he looked, second? Because any time I tried to bend the truth, Prabhupada always no. You just stop doing it. People tattled on me for selling books to the hippies in Hawaii. And Prabhupada called me in, did you sell books to those people? Yes. They're reading my books. They're chanting Hare Krishna. He didn't like tattletales. He didn't like artificiality. He didn't like pettiness. He was a Victorian gentleman, what to speak of everything else. So, I say Bhaktivinoda Thakur is my second favorite author. He said, second? No, not our second. I said, no, he's my first. You're my second because of the epic poet. His comment to me was, if I had 1/10 of the of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I would be a great devotee. So, Prabhupada's given us so much that we can actually ask, what would Prabhupada do? What would Prabhupada do? At least I do, because there's so many categories. You could give me a category and I could probably tell you a Prabhupada story or how he would do it. So he's constantly with me. What WWPD, what would Prabhupada do? And he was so magnanimous. I was in the British Museum and I found that Adore Ye All, the Holy Day, that poem he thought was lost in the harmonist to his guru. And if I didn't do anything else, that would be enough service in some ways. Now, there's a nuance of this. Sweeter Than May, he was writing it for the West, because May is a junkie month in India. Or maybe another adjective, a hot, whatever. May is sweet. He was writing it for the West. Speaking of Mr. Nair, he says, Gurudas, go ask Mr. Nair to give us the land, because you get along with everyone. But wait, you don't have any business sense. Tamal Krishna, you don't get along with anyone. I have to do it. It's true. So how much time do we have?
1:30. 13 more minutes.
Okay. So, at first, there was a whole different flavor. It was Swamiji. It was before Prabhupada. As I said, there was no movement even. The first semblance of a movement we got was when actually another Vrinda Swarup, Roman numeral 1A, was an ascetic, emaciated poet from New York. Sorry? Yeah, Bob Lefkowitz. And he was with Halidar. Now, these were, you know, the transition was very, Prabhupada had to spoon feed us, so we used to actually go out and smoke cigarettes after the kirtan like it was an intermission in the theater. Really? So Halidar, you know, can I bum a pell-mell? And the dogs would be out there. And the dog Ketal that came with me from Mexico used to come into the temple and chant. And all sorts of people would come. And Prabhupada, this one guy who thought he was God, and he was 7'4" and huge. I said, get out. And he did. You're not God. A preaching story, I'll get back to that, but a preaching story is and I was telling this to somebody, they liked it. In Amritsar, we came to India, and then Prabhupada came to Bombay, and it was wonderful. And then we went all together in the train to a gathering in Amritsar, and there was impersonalists. And I was on the stage, and I said, we don't become God. There's variegatedness in the spiritual world. Just like we pick a guru, we pick our wife, we pick our mentors, we eat prasadam instead of stool in the street. And this guy gives me the hook, takes me off the stage. You must come with me. Giriraj continued just about the same way, but a little bit. He takes me to Prabhupada. Your disciple is saying stool in the street, stool in the street. That's all he remembered. So I told Prabhupada the whole analogy, variegatedness. My disciples used graphic examples. Especially the Americans. The guy goes, Prabhupada says, that's good, can I use that? Yeah. That night, it was very cold. I made sure everybody had a place to sleep. There's no place for Giriraj, my friend, and myself. We go sleeping with the Mayavadis. This Mayavadi comes and says, we're all one, we're God. The spark and the fire are the same. And I said, no, a spark can't cook a meal. He says, no, you don't understand. It's the same, we're the same. I said, well, in quality we're the same in many ways, but not in the quantity of God. We're different. You know, even if you're successful in some kind of bliss, you can't maintain it and you can't function. It's really not a practical thing to be an impersonalist. We incorporate Krishna into our life, our very being, 24/7. If you have that ecstasy, how do you maintain that and function? And how do you maintain it anyway? Very few can. So that's just a little parenthetical thought. So he says, no, we're one. He has a blanket and he takes his thread. He says, see, the thread and the blanket are the same. Chaitya Guru enters my heart. I give him the thread and take his blanket. It's very cold. 15 minutes later, please give me. I said, you said it's the same. I gave you the thread. If you want your blanket, you have to reject your philosophy and bow down before my spiritual master. And important, Chaitya Guru, intuition they call it, listen to it, because I'll tell you two Chaitya Guru stories. Recently, Krishna told me to call Madhavisa Maharaj, and I did immediately without even thinking, and he left the planet that night. After a 20-minute conversation. Speaking of the open-mindedness of our spiritual master, Madhavisa Maharaj is sannyasi 1 week. Didn't want to associate with women. Didn't want to even be near women because he was actually somewhat of a ladies' man, so it was even worse. He didn't want to even read about Radharani. No, that's my joke. So I didn't want to associate. So, what does Prabhupada do? Because for years we were overseeing the deities of Vrindaban, and we were doing the final stages. He sends Madhavisa to oversee the deity polishing and everything, with Yamuna alone. 1 week, sannyasi, not wanting to The rickshaw is small and Yamuna's large. I couldn't help rubbing up against her, he said. His voice got on. I tried to bug my and bayonets running at the devotees. And actually, this Vyadabhara has this film. It goes like this. There's the devotees, and then you see it go, and you see the pavement and going bung, 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 bung. Chaitya Guru says, I get between the soldiers, and I say, we're singing the praises of President Nassar. The soldiers turn, put their bayonets and become our guard. Hare Krishna. Chant as long as you want. Now, these stories are great, and that was then, and this is now, and we do have Prabhupada with us. But also, one of the most real things is all we really have is each other in a very metaphorical way. And Prabhupada always wanted us to do things collectively. So many examples. If you do it together, everyone is successful, and if there's failure, no one is to blame, is my favorite one of that. No one's to blame if you do it together. So, one of the projects I'm doing is trying to facilitate a retirement villages, hospice, transition places for devotees or devotees' temperament. They have to follow the rules and regs. There is some interest in Arizona and Maui, and as Prabhupada said, you need land, capital, and people, men, but people, women too. So there is some here. We're going to have some meetings. I don't care where it is. I'm ready to go for the importance of this. I want to have a model that everybody can, in their temple, see. It doesn't have to be as big, but you could have the equipment, the people, and a room, or even you can have a room that could be used when it's needed for the transition hospice. I pulled Sudama out of a seedy hotel on Market Street and brought him to New Dwarka. Now, there's a lot of folks, they're struggling outside. Part of this is also some kind of maintenance and medical cooperation. My good friend Yadapadana has been doing this for years, not always with open ears. And a shaman in Mexico, he was the cameraman. He said, in my past life, I was a scientist trying to promote something good, and I was fighting for it. And you're still doing it in this life. So this is important to me. It's not completely altruistic, because I want to go to a place where we can hang out with all my devotee godbrothers. And there's ancillary businesses. There's consultants and films and seminars and music. So why should devotees, not Gurudas, but the guy who's been working in the kitchen, have to suffer in his last years? So this is important to me. And if anybody's interested in this, go see Yadapadana, because we're going to get all the people together, and I want to do it, you know. And it's not for me. I have a pretty good situation. I have a pretty good situation, but I want to have this place to go to if I don't even live there, because it's really needed. So, any other comments or questions?